Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the final webinar, or as I like to call it, the grand finale, in a four-part webinar series that Rosconn Strategic Land have undertaken in conjunction with the team at Farmers Weekly. For those of you that are watching one of our webinars for the first time, my name is Dan O'Donnell, the founder and managing director of Rosconn Strategic Land. We're a land promotion company that creates sustainable developments and communities across England, maximising landowners' asset value by promoting it through the planning system and selling the land to the open market in a trusted, transparent and innovative way. You can find out lots more about the company via our website, rosconnstrategicland.com. Feel free to navigate some of the interesting case studies at your leisure. This afternoon, I'm delighted to be joined by Dan Hatcher, our Group Planning Director. It is our pleasure to be providing you with a whistle-stop tour of land promotion. As per the previous webinars, we will have two polls, the first of which will be out shortly. We will provide the results of the first poll later in the presentation. Please do take part. We always find the results very interesting. The second poll will be released after the slide presentation and before our Q&A part of the show. You have been asking some really interesting questions and we're excited to answer some of these for you. Any questions that we don't get time to answer this evening, don't worry, as we'll provide you with an answer separately. Our thanks go out to all of you that have registered for this afternoon's webinar, and so far the count is 235. First poll question is about to be released, and that is, do you own some land that might have development potential? Be interested in those answers. So without further ado, we'll commence with the presentation. Promotion agreements explained. At Rosconn, we feel we've got the key to unlocking the full potential of your land. I'll now quickly elaborate on what makes us different from some of the other land promotion companies and some of the house builder market. The company is privately owned and funded by myself. This ensures landowners that Rosconn are fully motivated. We operate in a trustworthy and transparent manner, which means there are no hidden agendas. Rosconn has a highly experienced and professional in-house team that remain nimble, focused and tenacious. The organisational structure allows for quick decisions to be made by myself and the management team. We have a proven track record for delivering the goods for landowners on all types of residential-led sites. You can see plenty of examples in our case study section of the website. Rosconn ensure that all of the sites we deal with are sold for maximum value. The percentage differential on each case study demonstrates this, as do the live testimonials available from landowners that have travelled the Rosconn journey. When dealing with Rosconn, you receive a bespoke land package that's tailored to the landowner's needs. We don't operate a one-size-fits-all policy. Our aim is to remain flexible as each land parcel and its ownership structure are different. What is a promotion agreement? A land promotion agreement is when a land promoter agrees to promote a landowner's land through the planning system, maximising its value and selling it to the open market in conjunction with the landowner's advisors. All work undertaken on the promotion project falls on the promoter's shoulders, so no upfront costs are payable by the landowner until the land is successfully promoted and sold for maximum value. At its simplest, a promotion agreement is a contract between landowner and promoter that sets out the key objectives for the land to be promoted and sold. A key benefit of working with a land promoter, such as Rosconn Strategic Land, is the access to our in-house team of highly experienced planners and technical managers that ensure the landowner's project has the best possible chance of realising its fullest potential and achieving a maximised return. A promotion agreement and its key advantages. No financial risk or outlay for the landowner. Using Rosconn's team means you don't have to become personally embroiled in the complexities of the planning system. As Dan will elaborate on further later, the planning system never seems to get easier, regardless of government announcements and the like. A really important advantage, and possibly the cornerstone of just why a landowner is better to sign a land promotion agreement as opposed to option agreements and such like, is that the land is marketed post achieving planning permission into a transparent marketing arena. In essence, the price is being determined post the land obtaining some form of planning status, and with many of the technical issues catered for. When all the planning and technical work is already done, the eventual purchaser is prepared to offer maximum value due to much of the uncertainty and risk being removed. The transparency of the promotion agreement route ensures that the landowner and promoter are aligned in their goal to create a sustainable development that all can be proud of, in the full knowledge that they have received a maximised return for the land. As a land promoter, Rosconn is incentivised to deliver landowners the best possible return. Our promotion fee is linked to the eventual sale price, which means we want the land to sell for as much as possible. Some key things to consider. How involved do you want to be in the process? At Rosconn, we are happy for you to be as involved or as uninvolved as you'd like to be. This comes back to our flexible approach, where we ensure the agreement caters for the landowner's needs. Marketing of the site is so important, and it is essential that the land promoter and landowner's advisor, such as their rural surveyor, work hand in hand. This ensures that the right marketing approach is embarked on so that the landowner can be assured a maximised land receipt will be achieved. The choice of land promoter is very important. You must feel very comfortable in your choice. Why is this so important? A promotion agreement can often last for several years, so it's vital that the landowner feels that they can work closely with their chosen promoter through the highs and lows on the journey through the planning system. At Rosconn, we do our utmost to remove any of the lows and ensure they are not felt by the landowner. We try to absorb the sting and create solutions to problems so the customer experience is an enjoyable one. Setting a minimum value below which the land can't be sold is crucial and provides the landowner with peace of mind. It also holds all parties true to the goal of achieving the best possible land value. At Rosconn, we like to append an indicative distribution of sale proceeds to the promotion agreement so that the landowner understands how the payment cascade works through to the net amount of money they will receive for their land parcel. Establishing a minimum price that the landowner and their advisors are comfortable with allows all parties to ensure that the land is not sold below an amount that is palatable. To be clear, at Rosconn, we strive to ensure that the eventual sale price far exceeds the minimum, further demonstrating to the landowner that we are aligned in our quest of achieving the highest land value possible. Reserving rights through your land to potential future phases is very important. It is vital to get this right, as selling the land without the necessary access and service media rights can mean that you create a ransom strip scenario once the initial land parcels are sold. At Rosconn, we watch out for this situation fastidiously, ensuring that we work very closely with the landowner's legal team. Our land promotion process explained. As you will see from this slide, there are many steps along the journey to success, and the highly experienced and professional team at Rosconn guide landowners through every step, taking the burden of managing the process away so that the customer's journey is as smooth as possible. I'll quickly refer to each step, which will hopefully demonstrate why using a land promoter is a good idea. Firstly, we meet with the landowner and quite often their advisors to discuss our promotion strategy and terms of business. Providing mutually acceptable terms have been reached, solicitors are instructed and a promotion agreement is exchanged. The landowner's professional fees for entering into the promotion agreement are covered by Rosconn. Once the legal process is underway, various surveys are instructed and technical surveyors and consultants start to attend site in order to compile the compendium of reports that will be required to make planning representations to the local authority or validate a planning application. Stage 4 is an important consultation phase where we engage with key local stakeholders and the local authority. The more local buy-in that we can achieve, the better, as this helps the planning journey to avoid unnecessary turbulence. Following on from stage 4 is the all-important public consultation, something that we take very seriously at Rosconn. This is a great opportunity to reveal the genuine benefits of a development proposal coming forward in that particular geographical location. Moving through to stage 6, the early master plan will evolve and mature to take note of the all-important feedback received from the public consultation. Once the master plan and all supporting reports and surveys are in a form that Rosconn's highly experienced in-house team are happy to sign off on, then the planning application is submitted. Hopefully, we then move on to stage 8 of the process if the planning application is approved, but if not, worry not. We have 2 remedy stages whereby Rosconn review a planning refusal and then assess the best method to achieve success, either via a resubmission of the planning application or via submitting a planning appeal and having the planning application determined via an independent planning inspector. These 2 stages are so important to get right, which is where Rosconn's team are incredibly reliable. Our vast experience of dealing with planning appeals, legal challenges, and the like are second to none. Stage 9 is possibly my favourite of all the stages as I step down memory lane to my land agency days. This is where we work very closely with the landowner's agent or rural surveyor to ensure we are approaching all the relevant buyers in the marketplace to ensure that a maximised land receipt is achieved. A detailed tender pack is prepared by Rosconn's technical department and provided to the list of buyers. We are frequently complimented by landowners' advisors on how detailed and user-friendly our sale packs are. A tender period of between 4 to 6 weeks is arranged, and once bids are received, they are all assessed and tabulated to detail the comparisons in each party's offer. Post discussion with the landowner and their advisors, we then select the companies that we wish to interview, and their offers are interrogated to ensure that there are no holes that could allow offer reductions if they eventually become the selected buyer. Once step 10 is achieved, the solicitors set to work interacting with the chosen buyer's legal team. Rosconn and the landowner's solicitor work hard in tandem at this stage, ensuring they are both on hand around the clock to assist in providing a legal process that meets the timeframe set out at the marketing stage. Stage 11 is a truly joyous occasion for the landowner, who at this point has achieved a sale completion and the money is in the bank. Rosconn strives to ensure that the landowner's customer journey has been a smooth one, where they've always felt fully informed at all stages of the process. Our testimonial section on the website reveals some often heartfelt words from landowners that Rosconn have worked with over the years. The next slide shows us a variety of case studies. This slide provides you with a snapshot of some of the land promotion sites that Rosconn Strategic Land have been involved with. You'll note the variety of sizes, local authorities, geographical spread, and planning approaches if you spare your valuable time to review our website. You'll get a better idea of the price differentials between highest and lowest bids received post-marketing the land with planning status and technical issues often resolved. Each case study will provide you with the story behind each success and will hopefully demonstrate you just how tenacious Rosconn are. Tenacity is a fundamental ingredient of each and every team member at Rosconn and the external consultants that we engage. Please do take some time post the webinar and review the case studies at your leisure. If you have any queries or questions, we will be happy to take the time to talk you through some of them and how one of the particular planning strategies adopted could be utilised on your land parcel. Dan, I think the audience have probably heard enough from me at this stage, so over to you.
Thanks, Dan. Good evening, everyone. And yeah, my part of the show is all about planning. So apologies if it isn't as exciting as it could be. But here we go. So this part of the webinar is about determining whether your land has development potential. So at Rosconn, our in-house planning team regularly review hundreds of sites each year to determine whether they have immediate or longer-term potential. Sites are sourced in a number of ways. Self-sourcing is where we use our planning skills to predict future areas of growth across the country and then undertake a desk-based assessment to determine the most suitable and sustainable sites for development around particular settlements. We then approach the landowners to gauge their interest. We're regularly contacted by agents acting for landowners to see if we would be interested in promoting a land parcel on their behalf. And some sites are brought to us direct from landowners where they are unrepresented but keen to determine whether their land has potential. Finally, we're also increasingly getting landowners approaching us directly after we have secured a positive result for a landowner in the same area or is otherwise recommended by a friend or family member. On receipt of a potential development site, we will undertake a high-level assessment to determine whether a more fine-grained evaluation is required. If a site does not pass this initial assessment, we will advise the landowner or their agent accordingly. This assessment will usually cover the following. We will identify any absolute constraints that would suggest that the site is unsuitable for development. These include issues such as floodplain, important ecological sites, scheduled monuments and national parks, for instance. We'll review the overall planning case to support the development on the site immediately or longer term, with reference to the current local plan policies and designations that affect the site and the surrounding area. In financial terms, we have to make a judgment based on the upfront costs of promoting land and a whole range of risk factors, most significant of which is the uncertainties of the planning system. Terms will therefore be agreed on the current status of the land, the risks involved, and the overall timescales. Other considerations will generally be identified from the shared knowledge and experience of members of the Rosconn team and also our wider support network of consultants and advisors. If a site passes the initial sieve, we will undertake a more detailed review to enable us to decide whether we want to take the site forward, as well as determine the level of risk in doing so. We will therefore fully research all available records on issues such as flooding, ground conditions, underground services and legal constraints, as well as identify potential opportunities to integrate into an existing settlement or deliver benefits to the wider community. We will identify all the planning constraints that will affect the potential development of a site or otherwise limit how much of it can be developed by making judgments on issues such as ecology, heritage, access, amenity, landscape harm, etc. The current and emerging planning policy context will determine when a planning application for development could be submitted. We will judge the weight to be given to the current plan and identify the scope to promote the site's allocation in an emerging plan. In political terms, lack of stability at either national or local level can have a significant and sometimes rapid impact on short to medium term strategies for promoting land. Whilst Rosconn is an experienced team of property professionals, we are also fully supported by a wide network of external consultants and advisors that we use to help ensure we have the full picture on a site. Whilst technology can provide a good initial understanding of a site, there is no substitute to visiting a site to ensure all potential constraints and opportunities are identified. Once we've completed that due diligence, it's decision time. Rosconn's management team will meet to decide on whether the planning and financial risks are acceptable. If they are, terms are submitted to the landowner or their agent, accompanied by our proposed concept for the site and the planning strategy outlining how we will secure permission. In most cases, the landowner will review offers and shortlist some for interview. If successful, we will proceed to complete a promotion agreement and immediately commence site promotion. So that brings to an end the first part of my presentation. It's now time to look at the results from our first poll. So just to remind you, that was a vote on whether people think they have land that has development potential. And the results of the poll are yes, 64%, no, 24%, and not sure, 12%. So that's interesting in terms of majority of people think they have land that's got development potential. So you're obviously in the right place, and hopefully this is going to be an informative webinar for you. And obviously, if it's something of interest, then please obviously contact us, and we'd happy to have a discussion with you. So moving on to the second part of my presentation. This is more about the planning system and sort of outlines how complicated this part of the process is in terms of what we do as a land promoter. So the planning system is a plan-led system first and foremost, and the first Planning Act was introduced in 1947, but has evolved significantly over the decades. The basic premise on which all planning decisions are made is that proposals should be determined in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So it's clearly has primacy when making planning decisions. A development plan is primarily a district-wide local plan, and where relevant, may additionally comprise a neighbourhood plan covering a parish or community therein. Development plans must be kept up to date to reflect the latest national policy and current housing needs. And national policy advises that they should be reviewed at least every 5 years. Development plans which allocate land for housing should, in theory, provide in-principle support for subsequent planning applications. I say in theory as we're aware of a worrying trend over recent years where councils have refused applications on allocated sites, sometimes due to a change in local political leadership, for instance. In view of the status of the planning decision making, the optimum planning strategy will always consider the scope to promote a site for allocation through the next review of a local or neighbourhood plan, and Rosconn have a proven track record in promoting sites in this way. Development plans can, however, take a long time to adopt, and on average, the process takes 7 years from start to finish. Sites must be submitted to the council at the earliest stage possible if they are to be considered available for allocation. In recent years, we have also seen that the process is becoming more front-loaded with more detailed information regarding the suitability of the site required to be submitted at an early stage. Nevertheless, it is essential that representations promoting the site's suitability are submitted and maintained throughout the process. The local plan process includes multiple stages of preparation and associated consultation with all stakeholders. Once those initial stages are complete, the council will identify its preferred spatial strategy, which will guide how housing and other needs are distributed across an authority, enabling draft allocations to then be identified in the draft plan. A final draft plan is then prepared and consulted on before it is submitted for examination by an independent inspector. The examination involves a series of hearings where objectors can discuss their points in an open forum, after which the inspector will determine whether the plan is sound and can be adopted as submitted, or otherwise after modification. Many plans are found unsound and often require modification, which can then lead to further consultation, hearings, and further delays. Plans that cannot be made sound or are not legally compliant are withdrawn, and the whole process starts again. Plans recently having been withdrawn include Uttlesford in Essex, whose current local plan was adopted in 2005, and St Albans in Hertfordshire, whose current plan is now 27 years old. So, in a perfect world, all future development requirements in an area would be identified in an up-to-date plan, and planning applications would be progressed on such allocated sites once the plan is adopted. Unfortunately, in most cases, this isn't the reality. There are, however, other routes to bring forward development on unallocated sites where circumstances permit. One situation allowed for by the National Planning Policy Framework is where a plan has become out of date in that it was adopted more than 5 years ago, or otherwise where a local planning authority cannot demonstrate a sufficient supply of deliverable housing land over the next 5 years. Roughly, only half of local planning authorities currently have an up-to-date plan, and some do not have a sufficient deliverable supply of housing land. In these circumstances, the NPPF requires that housing developments should be granted permission without delay, provided they are sustainable and the benefits of those developments outweigh any harm. This is known as the presumption in favour of sustainable development, but this principle does not apply in areas such as Greenbelt, national parks, areas of outstanding natural beauty and SSSIs. The presumption was introduced by government in 2012 in a bid to encourage local planning authorities to keep plans up to date so that the pace of housing growth can be met, whilst providing an alternative route to housing delivery in cases where plans fail to do so. All political parties agree that we are not building enough housing, leading to a lack of affordability, overcrowding, and constraints on economic growth. A key barrier to the delivery of housing is the current planning system, leading to the government publishing the Planning for the Future white paper in August 2020, with the intention of making it simpler, faster, and more predictable. Whilst many of the proposals have been welcomed across the board, some have criticised it as a developer's charter. Alongside this, new methods of calculating future housing needs and how it should be distributed across the country, particularly in the home counties, put the government's reforms under significant scrutiny. The loss at the Chesham-in-Amersham by-election, seen as a protest against planning reform, led to Robert Jenrick losing his job as Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government in September of this year, and the government distancing itself from the white paper itself. More recently, Michael Gove has now replaced Jenrick, taking on the monumental task of fixing the planning system under the wider remit of the levelling up agenda. So what happens next? Planning reform has clearly taken a backseat over recent months to enable the dust to settle, and will now follow the levelling up white paper expected later this year or early next. Housing Minister Chris Pincher has said that a planning bill is likely to come forward in the early part of next year, leaving many to speculate whether previous radical reforms will be watered down or if something even more radical could be in the wings. Many have suggested that we are likely to see an increased focus on developing brownfield sites, albeit evidence and previous experience has shown this can only form part of the solution. There is also a suggestion that as part of the levelling up agenda, the government will look to shift its focus away from the southeast of England and focus increased housing delivery in the Midlands and north of England, aligned with plans for economic growth and infrastructure investment. Any changes to the planning system are inevitably going to take time, both to clarify and then bring into effect. In the short term, therefore, the complexities of the existing system will continue, albeit presenting opportunities in the interim to bring forward development to help meet the ongoing housing crisis. In the longer term, whilst a more streamlined and effective planning system is welcomed, it remains unclear what this will look like or how long it will take to bring into effect and start to have an impact. This is probably perhaps a topic for a future seminar.
Thanks, Dan. That was incredibly interesting, and I'm sure the audience has found that very informative. And as they're well aware, if they have any questions about planning, etc., then you're only a email or phone call away. So, folks, it's back to me. You thought you'd seen the last of me, but sadly not. So, preparing your land for sale. At Rosconn Strategic Land, we definitely have the right tools to maximize the return on your land with our highly skilled and tenacious in-house team, coupled with our best-in-class external consultants. You, as the landowner, are in the best possible hands. Your pre-sale checklist. Title to the land is very important. So ensuring that the land has clean title is fundamental for any buyer. And if the title is encumbered, then have the necessary defective title insurance policies to cover off the title risk been put in place. What is required to provide vacant possession? Are there tenancies that require notices to be served on them well in advance of the vacant possession date? This is something that Rosconn investigate at the point of signing a promotion agreement to ensure that there are no unnecessary surprises down the line when a tenant may feel they have more of a negotiating position due to any delay to the sale completing having a possible frustration value. Taxation is always an important consideration, and in reality is something that any landowner should seek specialist tax advice on from an early stage of the promotion process. The promoter is not the right person to provide this advice. It should be the landowner's accountant or specialist tax advisor that has come recommended by their family accountant. As touched on earlier, reserving the necessary access rights through to retain land for vehicular rights and all service media rights is crucially important. Obtaining an unequivocal sign-off from the landowner solicitor that the necessary rights have been reserved and are now on the legal title is key. Such rights should be noted very clearly in black and white with the necessary colorings on the title plan, detailing the position of the reserve rights so as to ensure no confusion in the future. Checking the boundary of the land to ensure that no new fence panels have been erected by neighbours that may try and claim access rights in years to come. Such boundaries should be checked before the promotion agreement is exchanged and then reviewed periodically during the life of the promotion agreement, just to check none of those naughty neighbours have been putting panels where they shouldn't. This will ensure that if any such openings are created onto the land, the landowner has ample time to extinguish such attempts well in advance of a land sale. Filling in the property inquiries forms can often be a daunting process for some landowners, so this is something that should be tackled at the start of the promotion agreement and then refreshed ahead of sale to ensure that the information contained is up to date. Rosconn are always happy to assist landowners and their legal advisors in this regard where we can. Legal searches that may have been undertaken at the start of the land promotion process should be updated so that the buyer and their legal team can rely on them as necessary. Such searches can take several months to return, so it is worth getting this in hand well in advance of a purchaser solicitor becoming instructed on the sale. Which surveys are required by the buyer is a very basic but at the same time fundamental question to be asked when selecting a buyer. Rosconn provide a list of reports in the tender pack along with a template reliance letter to any prospective buyers to approve. Under the tenacious determination of Rosconn's technical manager, Jonathan Breeze, the necessary reports and surveys are provided with reliance letters and the necessary assignments to the buyer and their legal team. The title. Checking that the property title is correctly registered at land registry is something for the landowner solicitor to set in motion before the land promotion process. Is the title up to date? Are there any historical encumbrances that should have been removed? Dealing with these early on in the process obviates unnecessary panic when a sale completion is within touching distance? Which entries are contained on the title? Are there mortgages, restrictions, or leases that require permission to be removed before the land can be sold? The earlier such issues are tackled, the better, as not everybody moves with the same level of urgency as we do in order to meet swift exchange timescales. Allowing several months to obtain the necessary consents from the beneficiaries of the encumbrances is important. Restrictive covenants are common and typically can be insured against. This is something that Rosconn like to investigate at the very beginning of the process to ensure we never obtain planning permission on a land parcel, having spent several hundreds of thousands of pounds to find that the scheme simply can't be delivered due to restrictive covenants on the title that can't be insured against or negotiated. Vacant possession. What type of lease is in existence, and have the necessary notices been served correctly? Getting this part of the process right is fundamental to ensuring vacant possession occurs in a timely fashion. From a practical perspective, what is physically required to ensure that vacant possession is achieved? Are there objects to be removed, sold, or cleared ahead of the handover date? Such works simply won't happen overnight, so careful consideration and planning is prudent. Tax. The landowner should register for VAT so that the VAT charge on the promoter's promotion fee is recoverable in addition to professional costs that will have been incurred on the land promotion journey. Opting to tax the land is essential if the landowner wishes to register for VAT, which, as just stated, is strongly advised. Registering for VAT, it's not difficult and is something that the landowner's accountant can typically take care of, or recommend a specialist rural accountant that is familiar with the necessary HMRC forms that require submitting along with the correct plans of the land. Not having the correct VAT registration forms in place for exchange and completion of a sale can slow matters down significantly. Rosconn always advise that this process is embarked on with HMRC at least 6 months ahead of marketing the land. Retaining land and things to consider. What type of boundary structure do you want? Rosconn like to state this explicitly clearly in the sale pack so any purchaser can make the necessary cost allowances. I spoke earlier about reserving the necessary access and service rights through the land so they can be provided for future access into the retained land. It's important to ensure that the necessary rights have been granted over the land that is being retained. One should always consider whether they need a control strip or what can also be referred to as a ransom strip. Setting out the above points clearly in the detailed sale pack is crucially important to ensure that when the land is placed into solicitors' hands, the buyer is not surprised by the approach taken by the landowners and promoter's solicitor. The second poll is just about to be released, and this is: are you now better informed about the benefits of using Lampromator? So I'm guessing that has come up. I'm seeing that's been successfully shared with you, you as the audience. So now it's time for us to move on to the Q&A part of the show, and we're delighted that questions are continuing to stream in from the viewers. So on to the first question. Barry, you're asking, at the moment, we have got a dispute with Natural England. Have you now, Barry? On some of the ground, does this need resolving before we get into discussion with yourselves? Natural England, is that one for me? I don't think so, Barry. That's one for Dan Hatcher. Dan, could you answer that one?
Yeah, I can have a go. Yeah, hi Barry. I think yeah, it's not really clear what the dispute is about. It's obviously something related to the environment or something ecologically sensitive, I'm guessing. But I don't think that necessarily means that it would prevent us from having a discussion, and it may well be that we can draw on our external consultant team to help resolve the issue. So I think if you'd like to contact us, we'd certainly be happy to review the position with you and offer some initial advice.
Great. Stuart, how can you get land seriously noticed for building because farming is limited and not being supported by the local council policies? The infrastructure for farming is neglected, and yet without any notice, they have allocated areas of conservation on the farmland. Dan, can you take this one as well, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think this is probably key to local plan promotion, is that unless you put land forward and make it clear to a local planning authority that your land is available, they can't consider it for allocation. So it's critical. Any council, when they're at the early stages of preparing a local plan, will carry out what's called a call for sites or something similar. Some councils have that open all the time. Some councils have a window within which you've got to submit your site, and if you don't submit it within that period, it won't be considered as a potential allocation. So it's critical to make sure that a plan outlining the site in red and a completed form are sent to the council at the right time and early on in that planning process. So that's probably the first way to raise the profile of your land and make sure the council are aware that your land is available for development. I think as a land promoter, we'll always go that one step further and try and look at other ways to further promote the site. So it could be that we'll supplement that submission to the council with by commissioning specific reports on things like highways, drainage, ecology and heritage, to demonstrate why a site is suitable and confirm that there are no insurmountable constraints to prevent development from taking place on the site. We may also look at starting to engage with local community stakeholders to identify potential benefits that a new development could help deliver. So sort of improving its justification and support, and development that delivers or maximizes benefits is usually better received than a standard housing site. So I think that's something else we'd look to do. And obviously, as the emerging plan progresses through those key stages that I mentioned earlier, we will look to engage at every stage to continue to promote the site and the associated benefits that would justify its allocation. So I think it's being involved early as possible in the process and being continually involved throughout that process. And you've got to be, tenacious. Dan's used the words a few times earlier, and that's what we have to be. You have to keep banging the door until somebody hopefully realizes that this is a good site and there isn't any reason why it shouldn't come forward for development. So hopefully that answers your question, Stuart.
Yeah, that's great, Dan. Next one's coming from James. James, what advice would you give concerning creating a consortia of landowners? Would it be a good idea for the land promoter to be involved directly within a consortium agreement? What would be the best way of ensuring equalisation of sales values across a consortium site with varied potential values? I'll give you a break on this one, Dan. I'm going to take it. On larger sites with multiple landowners, it can be a good idea to work as a consortium, all working in the same direction, not pulling in different ways to different agendas. Always important, I would think, to seek tax advice on this, which may lead down the road of land pool trusts. However, such advice should always be provided by a specialist tax advisor. If the land consortium is assembled, then the promoter can be involved directly as necessary to that particular project. but there's no reason why a land promotion company can't be involved with a consortium of landowners. Landowner surveyor would be better placed, I would think, to be able to advise on values. But in essence, with an equalisation agreement, all the land parcels are valued as a whole, and then the value of individual plots is worked out on a land area basis. There are always lots of different ways to assess value, so each case will be slightly different depending upon the circumstances. So hopefully, James, that's answered your question. There's a question that's come in from Max. Max, you are asking, please explain why I would sign up to a land promoter as opposed to selling my land directly to a house builder. Great question, Max. Again, I feel I'm on a roll. I'm going to take it if that's okay. So why are you going to choose a promoter as opposed to a house builder? Well, Max, look, in my opinion, and look, these are my opinions, okay? More chance of maximizing your financial return, plain and simple. You know, market value is tested once the land has gained some form of planning status. It's market value tested, open forum, at the point you've achieved some form of planning status and engaged a promoter to work all of those cost-saving angles and planning strategies to your advantage. You know, the promoter wants the land to sell for as much as possible, as don't forget, you know, our fees linked to the eventual sale price. So we want the land to sell for loads of money, lots of we want lots of builders bidding on it in truth and driving that price up for you, because that means our fees more. Of course, you could sign up directly with a house builder. We've got nothing against house builders. They're the companies that build the eventual houses. They're very important within the overall, you know, property industry. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But if you contract with a house builder at day one, you're binding yourself to one single buyer at the beginning of your planning journey. Just don't see how that would be sensible, as opposed to contracting with a company that's going to promote the land with you, obtain planning, and then put it out to a wider market, a wider pool of buyers when you've achieved more value. So hopefully that answers your question. But of course, I'm going to say all that I've just said because I'm a land promoter. Jane, you're asking, is there likely to be a shift by government towards prioritising brownfield land over greenfield, green belt development? Great question, Jane. As we all know at Rosconn, all matters planning are not matters for me, they're matters for Dan Hatcher. Dan, over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I think this is more than likely, judging from various announcements being made by the Prime Minister and other politicians over recent months. But I think the evidence of available brownfield land across the country does, however, show that this isn't sufficient to fully meet future housing needs, but it clearly can play a part, an important role, you know, part of the solution alongside greenfield development. I think, you know, we've seen it before. Previous governments have tried to apply a brownfield first policy. So you've got to develop all your brownfield before you start building on the greenfield sites in the past. But this has ultimately led to a significant drop in overall housing delivery, which obviously would have significant social and economic consequences. It also doesn't really help meet a broader range of housing need, because I think much of the brownfield land is within urban areas, and they tend to come forward as high density, high rise apartments, which is, you know, unsuitable for those seeking larger family homes with gardens, for instance, particularly, we've seen that over recent months with the pandemic. There is, people are realizing that how important their own sort of private amenity space is, and it doesn't suit everybody. So I think it will become more of a priority with government. There's obviously a lot more funding that's being directed to recover brownfield land, particularly those sites that are heavily contaminated. But it does take longer to deliver housing on those sites, and the supply is not, there is a finite supply of brownfield land. So ultimately, it's part of the solution, but it needs to be alongside some greenfield development.
Thanks, Dan. And Jane, hopefully that's answered your question, and you now feel better informed on that subject. David, you're asking what type of costs and fees are involved by a promoter. David, I'll answer this one. The promotion fee itself, which is the percentage that we would share with you out of the eventual sale proceeds based on the eventual sale price, that's very much dependent on how risky the prospects are of achieving planning permission. Can range anywhere from, on a site that has some form of planning status, allocation, draft allocation, it's in a neighbourhood plan, you may be nearer the sort of 10% end of the spectrum, and something with no status that's more medium term, longer term, 20%, sometimes slightly more. It just depends. It depends where it is across the country, how risky, how large, scale of it, potential end sale value, and each promotion company will come at terms and their fees in different ways. I have to say, at Rosconn, I think we're very fair with our fees and costs. In addition to the promotion fee, the external planning costs that have been incurred by ourselves along the promotion journey are reimbursable out of the sale proceeds. These are capped, though, at an agreed level. All landowners' costs, such as professional fees, are also recovered by the promoter on a success-only basis. So that's your solicitor for entering into the promotion agreement, your landowner's advisor, i.e. your rural surveyor or your agent, and quite often the accountant as well. We're shouldering those costs up front. However, they do get reimbursed out of the eventual sale proceeds on a success-only basis. And obviously at Rosconn, as our reputation will tell you, it's a very transparent approach that guarantees there's no double counting. All invoices are available for landowners and their advisors upon request, and we don't get reimbursed any internal management time. We have a wonderful team at Rosconn, many of which that have been with me for many, many years. And I can assure you that nobody turns up for free. So that there's quite a substantial overhead within Rosconn that isn't getting reimbursed out of the sale proceeds. It's only the external costs, so not our internal management time. So hopefully, David, that's given you a better idea of what type of costs. But again, all those that have asked questions, if the answer we've given hasn't quite answered your question, please do get in touch, and we'll be happy to elaborate. Jack, how easy is it to secure a development on my land if it's within the Greenbelt? Dan, if you're happy to take this one, please.
Yeah, sure. Greenbelt is a very emotive designation, has long been a significant constraint on meeting future development needs. The government has continued to maintain that the Greenbelt will be protected, but ultimately, in those local planning authorities, particularly the ones that sit around major conurbations like London and Birmingham and Manchester, for instance, they tend to sit wholly within the Greenbelt. So there's no land within those authorities that is not within the Greenbelt. So ultimately, there needs to be some release to meet housing and employment related development. And indeed, the government's policy enables local planning authorities in those circumstances to release greenbelt land for development through its local plan review, provided it's explored all other options first before looking to release its own greenbelt land. So that means, you know, making sure they've covered all the other options in terms of brownfield land, increasing densities within urban areas, and even looking at exporting some of its needs to adjacent authorities that might sit outside the greenbelt or otherwise have got lower performing greenbelt land within their area. I mean, undoubtedly, land within the greenbelt is much harder to secure development on, and takes a much longer time to do. But it's by no means impossible. And recently, there's been a number of encouraging appeal decisions across the country where unallocated sites outside the local plan have been allowed. And these are typically in areas where there is a severe and long-standing housing shortage, but it does require something else on top of that. It needs a comprehensive package of benefits to be demonstrated to overcome the harm arising from the site's location within the greenbelt. So it's not easy. It's certainly harder than non-greenbelt land, but it's not impossible. And we're currently promoting a number of greenbelt sites. So we'd be more than happy to undertake a complimentary site appraisal of your site if you'd like to make contact with us, Jack.
That's great, Dan. Jack, hopefully you're better informed now, and as Dan says, you know, if you've got a site that needs assessing, we'd love to do it. Bob, you're asking, what are the 3 most important attributes for a site in determining whether it has development potential for housing? Over to you on this one again, Dan, please.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't think you can probably narrow it down to 3, because I think, you know, there are a range of things we have to look at to determine whether a site's suitable, and it will vary from site to site. It will vary in terms of the scale of the site, but I think, sort of to answer the question, I suppose I'd first initially look at the site's context, in terms of how well related it is to an existing settlement and its associated facilities and services such as schools, shops, public transport. So that's the first thing I'd look at. Any site, you know, a fundamental requirement of any site is can you get access to that site? So can you get a vehicular access that meets the standards from the public highway for that intended use? Because without an access, the site's not deliverable. So that's pretty fundamental. So again, that's something we look at in a lot of detail at the front end of the process to make sure there aren't any constraints and we can achieve an access that meets local highway authority standards. So that's a key one. I'd then probably determine whether the site has got any absolute constraints, like I mentioned earlier, that would make the site unsuitable for development. So these are likely to be issues like, does a site lie within a floodplain, for instance, or is it designated in terms of its ecological, landscape or heritage importance, for instance? So those things can have obviously a fundamental impact on the suitability of land. So those are probably my sort of top 3, but as I say, the list goes on and on and on, and we have to cover off every issue right at the outset of our initial appraisal to determine whether the site's got potential, and then, you know, if there are problems, then how do you mitigate? Can they be mitigated? So, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean it's an insurmountable constraint. You know, can it be mitigated? So we'll look at the full range of constraints, but those are probably the 3 key ones that stand out.
Thanks, Dan. Bob, hopefully that's given you the answer you were looking for. Anne, you're asking, is there an issue in proving deliverability to a local authority if I use a Lampromator as opposed to a house builder? Yeah, I've come across this question before. Would you believe it? Some house builders have been known to throw this at Lampromator. So I've got a few answers to this one, if you don't mind, Dan. It depends on the size of the scheme in reality. For anything that doesn't involve the delivery of major infrastructure, such as link roads and the like, then a land promoter can prove deliverability by obtaining interest from the house builder market, who will demonstrate that they are keen to buy the land once the planning permission is obtained. At Rosconn, we undertake a detailed analysis of utility capacity so that the local authority are confident that once planning consent's achieved, then a house builder can purchase the land and start to deliver housing swiftly. Also, having sold many sites over many years, Rosconn will actually provide to the local authority a list of the sites, and will show the timeline from when we achieved outline permission to when outline from then when reserve matters was achieved, through to the first affordable house that's been delivered as part of the affordable housing package on the site, from when those are being built. So this whole sort of if your land's being promoted by a promoter, you can't prove deliverability. I'm sorry, I just don't. I clearly don't buy into it, because how have we sold so many sites over so many years? So it's really about how you demonstrate that to a local authority that may have had a seed of doubt put in their mind. I think it's quite easy to do, as I've just outlined. So hopefully, and that's provided you with an answer. But again, as I've said earlier, any further clarification, you've got our contact details. Fraser, you're asking, what are the likely impacts of climate change on future development proposals? Now, that is a great question, and it's very relevant. Dan, I'd like you to take this one, please.
Yep, sure. Yeah, I think we are seeing clearly we're seeing a gradual sort of ratcheting up of environmental standards in respect of new development. I think much of this is implemented through building regulations rather than planning policy, but I think we're increasingly seeing this being a critical part of the planning justification for individual projects. I think planning's been has for a long time sought to direct development to the most sustainable locations, such as those that are obviously well related to existing settlements, public transport links. So I think that's nothing new in terms of trying to cut down the number of car journeys and therefore emissions, carbon emissions. But I think the focus is moving forward is now more on the way we build new houses to ensure they're more thermally efficient, and they need less energy. They need less energy to heat, alongside the use of more sustainable energy sources through things such as solar panels and ground or air source heat pumps. And in addition, we're also being required to ensure all new properties are provided with electric vehicle charging points. I know that was something Boris mentioned alongside his Peppa Pig rant, but yeah, we're already seeing that anyway. I think pretty much every scheme that we're doing recently, there's a condition on there requiring every house to have its own EV charging point. I think over the coming years, therefore, will undoubtedly be a gradual move towards zero carbon housing. But obviously, this can't happen overnight, and it requires technologies to be advanced before they can be fully rolled out. Probably the other thing to remember is that new housing only forms a small part of the existing housing stock, and I think the bigger challenge is going to be sort of retrofitting such technologies into our existing homes. I think that's probably a bigger challenge, as we've seen recently. But yeah, as I say, it's a big issue, and obviously those things have an impact on costs ultimately and land values. But that is the way it's going, and it's the way it needs to be. I think that's clear.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And Fraser, a really relevant question, and thanks for asking that. It's very important at Rosconn. we're taking the climate change and the agenda very seriously, and trying to engage with as many forums as possible to be right on point with this. So great question, and Dan, thanks for taking it. Jim, you're asking, I'm interested in whether my land might be suitable for self-build housing. How do I go about finding out? I know a gentleman on this call that's currently working for planning applications through Planning for Custom Build. And as we all know at Rosconn, the brains don't come from me. On this webinar, they're coming from Dan Hatcher. So Dan, can you answer Jim's question there about custom build housing, seeing as you are a connoisseur, if you will, of all things custom build?
Yeah, I do like a bit of custom, self or custom build. I think they're one and the same. Just to briefly explain, self build is generally where someone is building their own house. A custom build is where you're building a house to your design, but it's being built by a contractor or a builder. But effectively, you're driving it, but you're taking the pain by using contractors and a company to build it for you, but to your specification and design. But they're one and the same in terms of the legislation. And this is definitely an area of the housing market that the government are keen to actively encourage and expand, because we're far behind other countries, particularly in Europe, where there are significantly more homes being built in this way. And there's therefore, I think there's a clear opportunity in this country to explore the potential for this, and is likely to become a more popular route to home ownership. Just briefly, every local planning authority is required to keep a register of those who have confirmed their interest in seeking a self-build plot in its area. But many people don't realize that there are forms. You can fill in a form and put yourself on the register within a council. If you want a plot within a particular authority, you put your name on the register, and then the council are obliged to make plots available for everybody on that. They need to match that need on the register with delivered plots with permission within the next 3 years. And if they don't do that, there would be an unmet need. So effectively, that creates an opportunity itself. So you're putting your name down on the basis that you want the council to make more plots available for this type of housing, or where they don't meet that requirement, then you potentially make a case on a unallocated site, generally one that sits adjacent to an existing settlement. You can make a case that because the council aren't delivering a sufficient number of plots, that they should therefore grant this permission. So we're seeing a lot of appeals going that way, where councils aren't providing sufficient plots, and I think that register is a way of gauging how many plots are needed. But as I said before, I don't think the majority of people are aware that's the way that how the assessment of need works, and I think it significantly underplays the level of demand out there for people who want to build their own houses. So I think again, if you want to speak to us about that particular area, we've developed quite an in-house expertise on that particular subject. So happy to take people's inquiries on that if they want to make contact.
Absolutely, yeah. No, Dan, that's great. So, Jim, you know where we are. Well, that's the end of the Q&A part of the session, but I have to say thank you for all those questions. Really great questions. Hopefully we've answered them as fully as possible. And the second poll results should be in. I think they'll be coming up on your screen. If they haven't already, they'll be up shortly. And if you remember what that question was, it was, are you now better informed about the benefits of using Lampromotors? Yes, no, or not sure. And a little birdie tells me that the results are as follows. Yes, 88.9%. Can I just say, wow, hopefully we'll be doing a good job, because it sounds like you're better informed. No, 5.6%, and not sure, 5.6%. I'm going to go with the majority. that feel they have been better informed about the benefits of using a Lampromator. For anyone that's still unsure, we're only a phone call away, and we'd be delighted to talk to you further about it, to be honest. So it's coming to the end of the presentation now, and it's been a great pleasure to present to you this afternoon's grand finale to Ask the Land Promoter series. We hope that you have found the presentation and discussion interesting and informative. As always, we've tried to answer as many questions as possible, and for those that didn't get answered, they will receive a separate response. Rosconn Strategic Land are actively searching for more land promotion opportunities that allow us the chance to add value to both local communities and landowners alike. Please do get in touch with us if you have some land that you think might have development potential. We offer a free appraisal service, and Rosconn would be delighted to provide you with our opinion. If you can manage to get in touch ahead of Christmas with an opportunity, we may be able to provide you with some positive feedback for you to consider over the festive period. I would personally like to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues that have worked with me on this webinar, and also the team at Farmers Weekly. Thank you once again for watching and sparing your valuable time. Rosconn Strategic Land greatly appreciate it. We look forward to hopefully seeing you when we come out to meet and discuss your land opportunity, providing we assess the land positively. If in the meantime, any viewers, your friends or family have land that could be right for development, please do get in touch and we will be delighted to discuss the opportunity at no cost to the landowner. Myself and the Rosconn team would like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas. I know it's early, but it's our opportunity to wish you one. And with a bit of luck, in the not too distant future, we will have the opportunity to promote some of your land, maximising its return in time for next